This told us a lot about the Spurs. Spurs lost to Dallas 109 to 120, but no need to panic. We saw things that we know we will see during the season. We're going to talk about some of the good, but we're going to also talk about the bad. Now, big loss like this, you ask yourself, yo, what positives can you spin from this? However, I think there was a lot of questions with this team, and we are going to get into all of that, all the things that we found answers to after this game. I am Bryan Colbert Jr. here with Spurs Digest. We are here with a post-game show. I wasn't sure if I was going to do this, so I didn't even want to tease it. I didn't want to, promise y'all something I wasn't going to be able to do, but I was so excited to stay up and watch the Spurs and talk about them as well because, man, again, we had so many questions with these Spurs. And the only way we were really going to see that is when the regular season started. And, I mean, even so, there's injuries still. So we don't even know what these guys are going to look like. However, there is plenty to get into now. We are so close to 2,000 subscribers, literally less than 200 people away. I honestly, truly think we're going to hit that before this weekend's over. And that is all shout out to y'all. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe right now. Hit the little doorbell thing so you can get notified whenever we post. We are going to be posting a lot. The season's back, baby. That is the first thing on the list, baby. The season is back, man. How cool is it to have hoops back, especially Spurs hoops? And we got to see Wemby. He's not a rookie no more. He's in year 2 now. Now it's time to get buckets. Now it's time to hoop. Didn't necessarily happen tonight. Now, I think fans are getting a little too crazy with Wemby. I think fans are getting a little extreme with, talking about his game tonight because, no, he did not shoot well. 1 for 8 from the 3 is not something you want to see. However, he still had 17 points. He still had 9 boards. He still impacted the game, even non-statistically. Like, you could just tell the difference from what the Spurs were doing when he was on the court, when he was off the court. And that part was a little rough, right? Like, I mean, we talked about this big man depth for the Spurs, and it's damn near non-existent. Like, what really hurt us like early was when Zach Collins came in. He got those 2 fouls real quick, and when your backup bigs in foul trouble, it doesn't allow your star big man to get rest when he needs it. Like Wemby had to check in back right away. Pop don't play that with the fouls, especially back-to-back fouls, and they were like dumb fouls. And that is something that's gonna happen with Zach Collins, right? Like Zach Collins is a scrappy guy. He is not a ref's favorite player. And Zach Collins, he's gonna rack up fouls sometimes, and it's like, what happens when that happens? What happens when Zach Collins is in foul trouble or can't necessarily be on the court because he has, early fouls in the first quarter, and Wemby needs that rest? What do? And I think that that's something we saw tonight, that it's like, Pop's not really going too deep in that big man rotation. Like, we didn't see, the rest of the big man come until very much later in the game when the game was over. And to me, I don't know. I think that's going to be tough. Like, I mean, Wemby's going to need his time when he has to get rest, when he can't do everything. And you saw it tonight. Like, you saw it tonight. It was a lot to ask from Wemby. But one thing that you did see, and I said the way Wemby's impacting the game, the way that Wemby is finding ways to not just, score, but be, effective on like all parts of the court. And really, to me, it was the way Wemby was able to get guys open. Wemby takes up so much attention. And we talked about this in the preseason. Like, I've been telling you guys, like, yo, there are going to be some open shots on this team. And I think the difference from this year to last year is that we actually got hitters. Like, we got real snipers, real shooters, guys that could be out there. I mean, Harrison Barnes was the benefactor of the attention that Wemby gets. Harrison Barnes was the benefactor of things that Chris Paul can do on that basketball court. It was great to see guys on that court being able to hit. Champagnie looked good. Champagnie, to me, is going to be one of those guys that it's going to make it really hard to not start him. He's so good at all of the little things. You know what I mean? He can score. He hustles. He has energy. I don't think he's that great of a defender. However, there is effort there. But I think the fact that he isn't, a high-level defender is what's going to keep him from starting ultimately. But I definitely think that shooting is necessary. Now, again, we didn't have Devin Vassell, right? And I do think Devin Vassell is very underrated when it comes to his 3-and-D abilities. I think that, he can guard very well on the perimeter, and I also think that he is lights out. Like he can fill that stat sheet up with that jumper, and like he's gonna get these open looks. You're seeing it. You're gonna see like Harrison Barnes was getting open looks, Champagnie was getting open looks, a few guys were getting open looks, but like having people that could actually knock that down effectively. Harrison Barnes is somebody that could hit that shot effectively. Now I don't know if you ever really want Harrison Barnes to be your leading scorer or like your go-to player or like your best perimeter scorer. I don't think that's going to be a sustainable thing for the Spurs, and I think that's why they didn't do too great tonight. They really struggled with that scoring. But however, just having like those guys that can hit that open shot to me is really big. To me, it's huge, especially when you have guys like Wemby who are going to have streaky nights like this where they're not hitting great. You know what I mean? Like I would have liked to see Jeremy Sochan maybe spread it out a little bit because Jeremy Sochan was having a pretty good game. He was having a pretty efficient game, and that's something that we come to expect from Jeremy Sochan. And back to Julian Champagnie, the reason I think his defense is going to hinder him from getting like the minutes that he probably should get, it's obvious that Chris Paul is not that lockdown defender that we're used to in his prime. Like Chris Paul at one point was one of the, better perimeter defenders in the NBA. That's not the case anymore. Like I don't want to call him a defensive liability because I feel like that's disrespectful to like a legend. However, if you go back and watch the tape, you will see so many times that they were taking advantage of whoever Chris Paul was guarding. There would be times when Chris Paul was just, playing too far off his man. There was time when he was leaving guys open, and it's just one of those things. He's older, man. He's in his 20th season, so this is not a knock on Chris Paul. However, I do think the two that starts for the Spurs this season, next to Chris Paul, is going to have locks. He's going to have to be a perimeter defender because that is something we saw tonight. And granted, that's a tough matchup, right? The Dallas Mavericks have scores all over their court. Hardy was looking good. You know what Doncic does. You know what Kyrie does. That is a tough matchup for anybody. Even if Vassell was back, I think those would have been tough matchups. However, you're going to have defense next to Chris Paul. And I think that's why it kind of didn't really work too well, the Champagnie Chris Paul. Like, we know when they started like making their rotations, I think you started to see things go a little smoother. But that lack of perimeter defense, I mean, that is what's going to hurt the Spurs. I do, however, think that Chris Paul, like, he looks very comfortable in this role he's playing for the Spurs. Like, I don't think it was all bad from him. Like, I was a little shocked that we saw the first lob in the second quarter. Like, it took to like the end of the second to see that first lob. But I think it's just getting comfortable, right? Like, Wemby wasn't catching the ball. He wasn't finishing at the rim. He just wasn't playing the game we're used to seeing. Even him missing shots. Like, I mean, 1 for 8 is not a Wemby game. Like, it's not what we've come to expect from Wemby. He wasn't very aggressive. He wasn't very strong. Like, it was a very interesting game for Wemby. But to me, it might just be jitters. Like, I'm going to chalk that up to just jitters just because, we know what this kid can do. And we're not going to overreact after one game. Like, he's coming off the Olympics. Things are different. There's a lot of attention on him. All eyes are on him. He's on primetime television. Kid's still, 20 years old, 21 years old. And speaking of kids, man, Stephen Castle, man, I'm telling you, I like the kid, man. I like him. Man, he's just something about him. Like, he's not scared of this moment. Like, getting 18 minutes, shooting 3 for 7, 8 points tonight, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. I mean, come on, man. Like, I can't wait to see this kid get more minutes. And honestly, we talk about that defense that we're going to need because of, Chris Paul's inability to, really lock up at this point. I can really see Stephen Castle, like, taking that, like, next step and becoming that starter at the 2 because we need a guy that's just athletic and physical. And, man, Castle looked good, and I think he won a lot of people over tonight. Like, it wasn't, like, a crazy performance, but remember, he's coming off the bench. This is a guy that's coming off the bench, and, is getting time. So it was great to see the rookie do that. But, that perimeter defense did look extremely rough. And that's going to be something that, like, we're going to have to look forward to. And honestly might be the lay of the land for this whole season. Like, it's just tough. I was very shocked to not see Wemby as aggressive at the rim. Like, a lot of times I felt like he could have left his man and, go for the block, but he wasn't really doing that. So it's very interesting to see. Not really sure what that was about. Because you're going to really, like, the way that this perimeter defense is, guys are going to get by these guys. Guys are going to be getting by Chris Paul. Guys are going to be getting open, and they're going to need Wemby on that help side to be able to, get stops and definitely something I think that, we're going to be looking forward as we continue to watch this team and we continue to watch these guys, get a little better. Because I do think they're going to get better. I do. I really think this team is going to get better. I really think we're going to see a lot of improvement as the games goes on. As Popovich figures out his rotations, like, very interesting to see Malachi Branham's usage. Like, I would have expected him to get more minutes. He got 6 minutes in garbage time. This was somebody that was starting. So, like, I mean, you could tell, like, he's trying to figure out this rotation. Like, Blake Wesley, man, looked very aggressive on defense. Like, he did not shy away from guarding guys like Doncic, guarding guys like Kyrie. Could see him getting a little more minutes because, again, you could see the necessity for defense. Tre Jones, he's so consistent, man. I just love him as a backup point guard. He's not somebody that's going to give you too many points and fill it up too much. But to me, like, he's going to be somebody that's very crucial. Like, he was getting big steals. He was getting big stops. His defense, to me, is just so pivotal. Them Jones boys, man. Them Jones boys love to play. And listen, before I go, I've seen y'all talking crazy about Jeremy Sochan. Listen, he's not my favorite player, right? He's not. I don't think he's a superstar. If you're going to tell me he was maybe even, with this, he was drafted too high, I'm not going to necessarily argue with you. I don't necessarily know if that's true, but I'm not necessarily going to argue with you about it either. However, y'all better stop sleeping on the kid. He tied and leading the game in scoring. 18 points, 6 for 11, 5 for 7 from the free throw line. My man was getting to the line. He was rebounded. He was using those pump fakes, man. He was really getting great position down low against a very, very tough set of centers for the Dallas Mavericks. And I think Wemby needs credit for that too, man. Like, having to do Gafford and then Lively and having to, not get that normal rest you get early in that first half. Like, all that stuff plays into it, right? But I think Sochan looked really, really good, man. His shot looked good. He was hitting from the free throw line. He was efficient. He was playing defense. And, like, one thing I want to point out about him, right? Because, again, there's going to be times when he's not, like, he's not the greatest defender in the world. But these are the things I want to point out. There's a time during the game, I think it's in the third quarter, like, the Dallas really started to get that, like, lead. They started to stretch that lead. The Spurs were able to, like, stop that run and, like, really kind of, like, get really close. The closest I think they got for the rest of the game because of Jeremy Sochan. Jeremy Sochan out of nowhere just presses Luka Doncic. Granted, he fouls him, but, like, it was a foul that didn't hurt the team at all. It wasn't like they were in the bonus or anything like that. But what it did was, like, he showed them, like, hey, man, like, come on, let's go. And you see him, like, rallying these guys, like, let's go. And then all of a sudden a run takes place because now everybody's playing full court. Now everybody's out there running and gunning. Everybody's talking. Everybody's locked in. And I think that's the type of energy Jeremy Sochan brings to a team. Granted, that energy is more valuable on a good team, but I do think that's what the Spurs are building here. So Jeremy Sochan, to me, he impressed, man. We talked about that pregame. We said it. We're like, listen, Jeremy Sochan is going to have to show up. Like, this is his year to show that he can play next to Wemby, that he's a part of the future of this team. And I think that's the same for Keldon. I think it's the same for a lot of these guys. Devin Vassell, like, when he comes back and gets healthy, because Vassell has struggled with, injuries his whole career, and, he's making good money. So, like, all these guys are, like, this is their auditions to show if they can play next to Wemby. We know Chris Paul got a couple years left, and we know he's going to be just fine. We know Harrison Barnes is going to be just fine. Harrison Barnes don't even miss games. There's a lot to see here, a lot that could go right for this team. And I'm really, like, I'm excited, man. It's tough, like, after a loss to be feeling, like, decent. Things looked ugly. I wasn't expecting a win. Like, Dallas's, bro, they was just in the championship. They was just in the finals, man. You know what I mean? Like, Dallas is tough, and Dallas has something to prove. But I also think the Spurs do too. I did not expect Wemby to, not be dominant. I kind of expected a real dominant performance from Wemby, but we know that's going to come. And imagine when Wemby really is starting to get out there and really make plays, Spurs team is going to be scary because we saw good things, man. It was great to see, what these guys can do. And it was great to see Pop out there again, man. The ageless wonder, Gregg Popovich, man. So, man, it was fun. It's great to have Spurs basketball. And I think that's a good recap, man. I'm out. I wanted to give you guys instant reaction just because I'm so excited about this season. Spurs family, I am Bryan Colbert here with Spurs Digest. Remember to subscribe, share, comment, ask us questions, man. There's ways I can take, like, screenshots of y'all comments and pull them up, and we can, like, talk, like, in real time. And I'd love to hear from you guys. I'd love to hear y'all questions. Holla at me. Until next time, Spurs family, for Bryan Colbert, Spurs Digest, I'm out.